Okay, in this lesson, I'm going to show you how to add and subtract like fractions. This is similar to adding and subtracting integers. So here's an example. Let's say we've got 1/2 plus 1/2. Okay. In this scenario where the denominator is a 2, your answer is going to be a 2. Okay. We maintain the denominator. The only thing that you add are the numerators. So in this case, 1 plus 1 is equal to 2. 2 over 2 is equal to 1, simplified. Okay, let's try another example. Let's say we have 1/4 plus 2/4. Okay, we keep the denominator the same and we just add across the numerators. So 1 plus 2 is equal to 3. And that becomes your answer, 3/4. Okay, now let's move on to subtraction. Let's suppose we have 4/5 minus 1/5. Okay, similar to the addition, we keep the denominator 5 in this case, since both fractions have the denominator 5, and all we do is subtract the numerator. So it would be 4 minus 1, which is equal to 3. Here's another example. Now let's say we have 5/7 minus 2/7. Okay. Again, we keep the denominator 7, and then we just subtract the numerator. 5 minus 2 is equal to 3. Okay, so let's increase the level of difficulty a little bit. And this is where the rules of integers come into play. Okay, here's what I mean. Let's suppose we have negative 1/3 plus negative 1/3. Okay. Again, the rules apply here for both the fractions and adding negative integers. In other words, we start with the denominator and we know it's going to be a 3, okay, because both denominators in this problem is a 3. Then we just add the numerators. This is where the rules of integers come into play. When you add a negative to another negative, you take the sum of their positives, in this case 2, and you maintain the sign. So it's negative 2/3. Okay. Now, just to clarify, you can write negative 2/3 the way I just wrote it, or it's also negative 2/3, and you can also write it as 2 over negative 3. Okay. All three answers are exactly the same, and you can write it however you want. The correct way, the most correct way, however, is this middle one right here. Okay, and you'll see this in most textbooks and standardized tests. They'll put the negative directly across the bar. Okay, but like I said, either way, it's exactly the same. Okay, so this blue box is the standard way. Okay, so let's add to the complication here. So what happens if we have negative 1/3 minus 1/3? Okay, now if you recall from my previous lesson, we don't like negatives, so we need to do something about the negatives. In other words, let's change it to a positive. Okay, so this now becomes negative 1/3 We keep the same as the first one, except this time we're going to add, and now we're going to add a negative 1/3. Okay, so then this becomes the same problem as we saw earlier. Look at this. This is exactly like this, right? Negative 1/3 plus negative 1/3. And therefore, our answer will be, I'm going to start with the denominator, maintain the 3, and now we have negative 1 plus negative 1. How do we do this? We take their positive terms, so it would be 1 plus 1 is 2, and since both are negative, we keep the negative term. Okay? Let's try another example. I'm going to write this in green this time. Actually, I'll write this in red. Okay, what happens if we have one-fifth minus 3/5? Okay, so we always follow the rules. When we're dealing with negatives, we need to see and figure out if we can do something about the negative and make it a positive, okay? Because we don't like negative signs. So in this case, we're going to rewrite this. 1/5 plus negative 3/5. Okay? Now, I put terms inside parentheses only to make it easier for you to see what's inside the parentheses. However, in this case, and even in the previous case, parentheses are not required. Okay, so this is just a way to make it easier for you to see what's going on. Okay, so the next step here is we're going to have the denominator 5, okay, because both fractions denominators are 5, okay. Now, what's the rule of adding a positive and a negative integer? So here we've got 1 in the numerator and 3 in the other numerator. So the rule is we're going to take their positive values, just the way I've written it, and ask ourselves, what is the difference between 1 and 3? The answer is 2, so we're going to write it up here. Okay. Then we ask ourselves, which of the two numbers is the larger one? In this case, it's 3. And what is the sign in front of the 3? It's a negative. Therefore, our answer has to be negative. Okay? Try another one. Let's suppose we have negative 1/7 plus 4/7. Okay? We have a negative term adding to a positive term. So we need to follow the same rules we did in the last problem. Okay? Before we do that, we're going to write the fraction down at the bottom. We know it's going to be 7 already, okay? Because we are adding and subtracting like fractions, meaning the fractions or the denominators are the same. So now we have a negative 1 and a positive 4. So we're going to write that down here, just the positive values, okay? And you don't have to do it this way, but I'm writing it just for the sake of clarity so that you could see it rather than imagining it. So I'm writing the positive values and we ask ourselves, what is the difference between 1 and 4? The answer is 3. So we write that here, okay? Now, of the two numbers, which is larger? 4. So what is the sign in front of the 4? That's positive. Therefore, my answer remains as 3/7. Okay. Let's try one more example. Let's suppose we have 3/8 minus 5/8. Okay. So we have a negative involved and we can do something about it. So we're going to change that term to plus negative 5/8. Okay. Now that we're adding a positive, this is a positive, and this is a negative, okay, term, we need to follow the rules of the integer that you learned earlier. So we're going to deal with the denominator first. We maintain the 8. Then we look at the numerators as positive numbers, okay, so 3 and 5. And we ask ourselves, what is the difference between 3 and 5? The answer is 2. So we're going to write this down here, okay. Then, of the two numbers, which is larger? 5 is the larger one. And what is the sign in front of that? It is a negative. So we're going to change the sign to negative 2/8. Okay. Negative 2/8 reduces to negative 1/4 because 2 goes into negative 2 one time, right up here. Okay. 2 goes into negative 2 one time, or negative 1 time, and 2 goes into 8 4 times. And this is how we get negative 1/4. Okay. I just covered several steps with adding and subtracting like fractions. This may have been a little confusing and you may have missed a few steps. If you're not absolutely sure, please go back to the beginning of the video and watch through it as many times as you need until you fully understand it. Thank you.